Round 8 of Spielberg Open for Levi Rosman is officially over. He just concluded his penultimate game in the third tournament after his return to the competitive chess, attempting to get a Grandmaster title. For this game, we prepped exactly what happened over the board. So Levi's opponent was Suleiman Suleimanli, young player from Azerbaijan, rated 2290. And in our prep, we noticed that he likes to play exactly the same system over and over, which is knight f3. So d5 was part of the prep, and the young Azerbaijani, he really likes to play g3. There's a couple of systems here to play from the black's perspective, but we decided to play bishop g4. In a nutshell, the idea is to take on f3 very quickly, then be very solid in the center. So bishop g2 makes sense, c6. This idea is meant that white creates some sort of wall against white's light square bishop on g2 so that he doesn't get very active. Short castle was played, knight e7, and this is a very smart way to play this position because black keeps all the opportunities open. Like black could play e6, black could play e5, black could play e5, bishop d6, knight e7. There are lines like when black could even play the stonewall position with e6, f5 since the last bishop is out. h3 was played by Suleiman. We expected this move because this is a very smart and trendy move, and also by coincidence one of the top choices of modern chess engines. The idea is to ask black to define the setup before white does the same. Like after bishop f3, white can take on f3 with the pawn and play f4. White can take with the bishop here, and then depending on what black does, play either d4, e4, or maybe d3, e4. So this is really smart, but again, we were in the prep, bishop f3 was played, bishop f3, white attempts to fight for the center, e5, Levi played very quickly, so here white has a couple of ways to continue. Bishop g2 was not part of our preparation for the game. We expected moves like d3 or c4, but okay, bishop g2 was played, knight f6 is easy, d4. Yeah, actually, one thing we noticed that what Suleiman really likes to do, he likes to play d4 no matter what. d3, knight e2, and e4 is a more casual way to play in the red t opening from the white's perspective. And with d4, essentially here, white attempts to open up the position, d4, c4, knight c3, to increase the power of those bishops. So e takes on d4 was the natural choice. e4 quite doesn't work, even though it would follow the logic that black has two knights. The thing is here, the game is very concrete, and white can play knight c3 and queen b3 and ask black very direct questions what to do with those weakened pawns on d5 and b7. So that's why e takes on d4 was played, followed by bishop c5. Here, white player was considering where to put the queen so that he can push c4, because he needs to eliminate his powerful pawn chain. He played queen f4, short castle, c4. Levi played rook e8. I like this move. Also, we are considering d4 during the live broadcast, which doesn't quite open up the bishop, but again, white could play knight e2, knight b3, hit the bishop on c5, the pawn on d4, so the position remains level. Levi played a great move, rook e8. So far, he is playing the perfect chess, with the idea to hit a pawn on e2, and after c takes on d5, knight e5. This is really great, and white's queen d2 looks a bit odd. Also, giving up the bishop on d5 here doesn't feel quite right, because black has fully completed development, and even though the pawn on d5 is an isolated pawn, white is underdeveloped and should be pretty careful when it comes to the position. So queen c4 was played, and here white was kind of threatening bishop d5, but actually he was mainly thinking about knight c3 and e4 and f4 at some point. Levi played a great move, queen e7. I consider queen b6 as well, so it looked pretty logical, but queen e7 is probably the best. And here, bishop d5 was played. I think here white could have played a bit more ambitious. He could have played something like e3 maybe, try to limit the bishop here in c5, and they would have to prove what he has, like knight e5, queen e2. White wants to play bishop d2, knight c3, and then in the long run get the two bishops and a pawn majority at a king side. So e4 probably would be a bit too much, because after queen e7, e4, black can play knight e5, and slowly black is getting really active. For example, queen e2 and knight b4, you need to watch out for some incoming knight e3 ideas. Even though, by the way, engine says king h2, and white can even attempt to fight for an advantage, which I find it very hard to believe. So white played bishop d5, c takes on d5, and queen takes on d5. I was looking here at some funny ideas with queen d2 to sacrifice the knight here on d7. There were some crazy ideas like queen d7, rook d8, for example, queen b7 and rook d1. So here's ideas like bishop f2 or rook f1. I looked at the lines like queen g2, which is basically the only move, because if you take it, check here, here, and here, that's a mate on the board. So I looked at this line for fun during the broadcast, and after queen g2, there was this idea, a rook f1, what was it? No, this was not the line that I looked at. I was looking at something else. I already don't remember. Yeah, okay, this is what engine says, queen f3, but I found a way to get an equal position. Yeah, queen g3, queen g2, rook e1, so white is completely underdeveloped, but engine says somehow this is a draw. I'm not sure if this line even makes any sense. Bishop f2, king h1. Okay, I mean, what is this? g6. Queen g3, bishop g3, black is slightly better. Okay. I mean, this is quite amazing. I don't know what this is. Why black is essentially down a piece, but okay, whatever. So I would say this is funny business. Do not do it. Let me play correctly knight f6. Maybe knight b6 also was a move, but knight f6 is good because the knight is getting to d4 square. And here I was considering queen f5, maybe the best move for white. Meaning if you take on e2, the bishop is hanging, and if you play g6, queen f3, you cannot take on e2 because the knight is hanging. So I was trying to evaluate this position, what happens after knight e4, what would play something like e3, or what was the move I was proposing here. Maybe knight c3, queen c3. It's looking really dry. Rook c8, black has dynamics, but maybe it's not enough to claim an advantage. Anyway, white played something else. White played queen g2. And here I think Levy made an accuracy. Okay, maybe it's not an accuracy, but somehow it led to a very dry position. So I was considering, was it a good idea to play knight e4, play for the domination here? So the idea is that here Levy could have tried to make his opponent's life quite uncomfortable, not take the pawn. So let's say white will play knight c3, takes, and even this was a move, of course, queen e2, but I was wondering how about just rook d8, and think about the pawn on e2 later. And after e3, I don't know, play something like b6, maybe h5, queen e6, queen c4, and pretend you're not doing a pawn, but white has some difficulties to find a place for the bishop. For example, what you want to do is to get the pawn on c3, and you have a chance to organize the also a passed pawn at the queen side. Of course, it's easy to suggest this, but so difficult to execute. So actually, Levy's queen e2 was just fine. Not the knight c3, to be honest, I even did not see during the broadcast that he cast the best move, queen h5. The point is, queen b7, queen h3, white is simply worse. And if white will continue bishop f4, Levy here would continue something like rook d8, I suppose. Queen b7 still collects a pawn on h3, and any moves like rook d1, you can always play bishop d4 move here or something else. The game continues, but objectively, of course, it's quite level. Black is quite a bit slightly better because of the better bishop. This bishop on f4 doesn't do much, but due to the symmetrical structure here that we have, the chances that this game would finish in a draw are pretty high. So what happened is that Levy played queen c2, and now after bishop g5, the game just fizzles out to a draw. Yeah, unfortunately, queen c2 was not really the best move. Bishop d4, takes. Levy was hoping that this bishop is going to be really active, but now white takes on b7, and if Levy would continue with rook b8, queen a7, and rook b2, doesn't look like he's playing here for the win. White just plays knight e5 and actually keeps a healthy extra pawn on a2. So I have difficulty finding a good place for the bishop here. So what Levy did, he just played bishop c3 and simply offered the draw, because after b takes queen c3, there's not much to play for. 3 pawns versus 3 at the king side, no weaknesses for both players, just the heavy pieces. So Levy simply decided to save the energy for the final game. So the final game of Spilimbergo Open 2024 will continue tomorrow. There's going to be a morning round at 9:13 Central European Summer Time. So don't forget to tune in and see if Levy will be able to finish the tournament on a positive note and score a victory and maybe get 6 points out of 9. Right, he cast 5 points out of 8. no chances for a GM nor in this tournament. It's all about the lessons, about making the right conclusions. Everything is good. So thank you for watching, and also I apologize to everybody during the broadcast because we had during the very end of the game small technological issues. I'll make sure this never happens again. So be good, have a great evening, and come back tomorrow to see the final round live.